Hello and welcome to the Joe Ligato Show. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Ligato, and today we're going to be talking about the anti-white racism that is occurring and very prevalent throughout Western society. So I faced this when I was in academia, and it's all over every type of industry, every type of organization, because if it's in academia, academia trains the leaders of the future, and so if it's in academia, it's going to be everywhere in a few short years. So let's see what this article has to say. And this is an article on Zero Hedge. And it says, NSA promotes anti-white racism among employees. These leaks reveal. A leaked document from the NSA reveals advocacy of divisive racial and gender ideologies with a particular focus on white people who are characterized as oppressors. A copy of the NSA's Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Glossary, published in May 2022, was recently obtained by the Daily Wire. The glossary defines 327 social justice terms and explicitly promotes critical race theory and LGBT ideologies. It defines settler colonialism as enforcing codes of superiority such as white supremacy. Examples include white European occupation of lands in what is now the United States, Spain's settlements throughout Latin America, and the apartheid government established by white Europeans in South Africa. White fragility is defined as a state in which even a minimum amount of racial stress becomes intolerable, triggering a range of defensive moves in white people. Okay, so a few things to comment here. One is they view everything as white racism, and if you defend yourself, you're a racist. If you don't defend yourself, you're a racist. And so no matter what, you are considered a racist. Okay? And here they call it white fragility if you try to defend yourself or point to examples where you have not been racist. I just got done recording a video talking about how if a business is labeled as black owned on Yelp, it gets more traffic, more orders and things like that from people than a non-black owned labeled business. Okay. And I would encourage you to go watch that video of mine, because not only does being a black-owned business help out the business, but that increased revenue, increased people coming to your business is led by white people. It's not other black people supporting black people. It is white people supporting black people. And so it's concerning to me, the hostility, overt hostility across every sector of society in Western civilization at this point, the overt hostility towards white people, and the conclusion that all white people are racist because the data definitively does not support this. I've seen the data in a lot of cases. I know one group of people who had an over $1 million grant trying to look at implicit bias, implicit racism of people, and they ignored some data, they fudged some other data to conclude some things that they wanted to have be the conclusions. And I'm not going to go into specifics, obviously, but it's clearly the case that this data is, people only show you the data that agrees with what they're saying, and they're ignoring, and in a lot of cases, not even allowing to be published data that refutes what they're saying. And in this case, I can definitively tell you, I should not say definitively, I can, with as much certainty as possible, tell you that white people on average are very much not racist. Compared to especially other groups. There's been studies showing the in-group bias of various groups, and white people are the lowest compared to blacks, Asians, and Hispanics. Okay. Moving on, it says these moves include the outward display of emotions such as anger, fear, and guilt, and behavior such as argumentation, silence, and leaving the stress-inducing situation. Okay, so it's hilarious because these are the three things you could do. You could either argue against the claims of racism, you could stay silent and accept the claims of racism, or you could leave the situation. Those are your three options, and all of them lead the DEI people to conclude that you are racist. This is a ridiculous ideology. I can't emphasize enough how ridiculous of an ideology this is, because that does not make any sense whatsoever. Moving on, says these behaviors in turn function to reinstate white racial equilibrium. Racial stress results from an interruption to what is racially familiar. The document says, while citing Robin DiAngelo, Ms. DiAngelo is the author of the book White Fragility, Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism, and a later edition that is adaptive for young adults. term racism is only defined in relation to white people or whiteness, which it claims is automatically deemed to be better or more normal than other racially defined groups. Racism, the institutional type, creates advantages for whites and oppression and disadvantage for people from groups classified as people of color. So again, that's not true. And the thing is, they talk about systemic racism in the abstract. If they make it measurable in any way, shape, or form, people who are non-white benefit in Western institutions to a very large degree. And you can know this on an individual level because if you ever put down that you're Native American, Asian, Hispanic, Black on any applications, you get more callbacks, you get more chances for a job, things like that, because there is anti-white discrimination, anti-white racism, I will call it, going on throughout all of Western civilization. Okay? And I know this because I know the personnel selection literature, and I can tell you pretty confidently that they make a decision between, and if you're seeing, and I've made videos on this, if you're seeing all the declines in quality and quantity of various products and services in Western civilization, that is because they've chosen to select people for jobs not based on their qualifications, but primarily based off of diversity goals of their organization. And in my field, when we're talking about personnel selection, we talk about it as the adverse impact versus job performance trade-off. And they're willing to give up a little bit of job performance in order to have a more diverse workplace. Okay? So they are not choosing the most competent people for the job. In fact, in a lot of cases, the organization is not allowed to choose the most competent person for the job because they have to choose people who meet their diversity goals. Otherwise, they could get sued. Okay? And I know this because various mentors of mine have gone into the courtroom and talked about how, like, listen, there's not enough diversity here. And so there's a case to be made that this company should be sued and should lose because they're not hiring enough people from various groups. Okay? And it goes on to talk about micro-invalidations is the negation of the feelings or thoughts of a person of color. As an example, it says white individuals often ask Asian Americans where they were born, conveying the message that they're perpetual foreigners in their own land. I mean, I often ask people like where their family's from because I'm interested in talking about my own heritage. And so that's just kind of a way I get to talk about it. It's so weird. I had this happen with a friend of mine because we were talking about geopolitics. Well, I don't even want to call him a friend. I just met him at like a coffee shop. But we were talking about geopolitics and like I asked him where his family's from. And he's like, he said New York. And like he obviously knew what I was talking about because I was about to talk about India. And I'm like, I couldn't tell if he was where from South Asia, where he was from, but I could tell he was clearly South Asian. And he was like playing coy. I'm like, well, I plan on talking about India here, and I have some somewhat controversial opinions. I want to make sure I don't offend you. And so I was talking about different ways of immigration to the United States, and I talked about my own wave of immigration, Greek, Italian, and Jewish, to the United States. And I talked about the future waves of immigration from places like East Asia and India and stuff like that. But like, for some reason, this really upsets people, and so they don't want to talk about it, where their heritage is from. But like the thing is, there's no real American ethnicity aside from potentially the Native Americans, but even then, we think that they came from Siberia. And so it's just kind of silly whenever people like get upset about this type of thing. So moving on, anyways, it says a privileged group member is said to be people belonging to the following classes: white men, owning class, upper middle class, heterosexuals, Gentiles, Christians, non-disabled individuals. What? The most wealthy religion in America are people of Jewish descent. So this is such a Zionist thing to say here. The Zionists are the clear economic elite by every quantitative metric possible. And so they're saying Gentiles here are the actual ones in charge. This is simply ridiculous. Anyways, it goes on to say whiteness is defined as a broad social construction, blah, blah, blah. Gender terms focus on equity. Oh, these gender terms, by the way, these come from the Talmud, which is the Jewish book talking about different genders, different sexual orientations. These are things that are of really Jewish ethics that have become pervasive throughout Western civilization. So when they talk about Judeo-Christian culture, they're talking about Zer. Okay? Moving on, it says promoting equity involves identifying and overcoming intentional and unintentional barriers arising from bias or systemic structures. Okay. So they're focusing on all these things, such as a person's gender instead of preventing terrorist attacks. And they're also diversifying the military too, which is why military recruitment is so low right now. They can't get enough people willing to actually join the United States military. It's just embarrassing what is going on throughout all sectors of America. Okay, so it goes on to say, the Pentagon's job is to develop our men and women in the armed forces into a united, lethal, and battle-ready force to defeat our enemies and defend our interests. It is not supposed to be a woke social engineering experiment wrapped in a uniform. This person said, Representative Chip Roy, Republican from Texas. So, yeah, I just want to emphasize, just to end this segment, all institutions are downstream of education, of academia. And if academia is captured by a political ideology, such as cultural Marxism, social justice warriorism, then the leaders of the future who are trained in academia will influence all other types of organizations. Big business, government, healthcare, all of them are infected with the DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion ideology. And so that is why the quality of products and services is so down. So it's decreasing in America today. Thank you so much for investing your time in watching this video. If you found the content informative, be sure to show your support by giving us an upvote. Your engagement goes a long way in boosting our visibility within the algorithm. To stay ahead on the most pressing contemporary issues, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We're committed to delivering up-to-date, thought-provoking content on a daily basis, and we want you to be a part of this journey. Also, your thoughts matter to us, so please share any comments, questions, concerns, and/or critiques in the comment section below. I personally read each one and I respond when necessary. Given the nature of our content, where we expose the actions of the oligarchs who exploit the masses, intentional suppression in the algorithm is an unfortunate reality. If you believe in our mission, you can help by spreading the word. Tell your friends about our content. Let's amplify the voices of those that challenge the status quo. Speaking of amplifying voices, I need your help. As many of you know, I gave up a lucrative career in the fastest growing field and the highest paying subfield of psychology in the United States to move to the Philippines to provide content that I think is important for my viewers to hear. I left so I could avoid repercussions for speaking about topics that are taboo in the United States. This decision came with significant financial sacrifices, but your support can help sustain the work we do. Check out the links in the description for how to support our channel. Every contribution, big or small, is genuinely appreciated. Finally, as a channel, we stand with the people of Palestine. We believe in their freedom, and by supporting us, you can contribute to this shared vision. Thank you for being a part of our community. Your viewership is invaluable, and I genuinely hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye.